Malibuca won 5 out of the 6 games he played in the solo cash cup. Let's take a look at all 6 of these games and learn how to win games like Malibuca. Malibuca lands at Fridgeburg throughout the whole tournament, and in game 1 he is contested by 2 players. Malibuca loots up quickly and uses an impulse grenade to make his off spawn looting even faster. Malibuca then plays inside of a house to safely farm out materials while the other 2 players fight each other. Malibuca is able to quickly peek out and steal the first kill, and then he pushes towards the second player. Malibuca times his pickaxe swing at the exact second that he breaks the floor, so he's able to jump in the box. Malibuca then hits a big shot and then immediately grabs the wall from the player he's pushing. Malibuca then edits the wall and sprays the ramp while tracking the opponent through the ramp, allowing Malibuca to get an extra shot off onto his enemy. Malibuca then puts pressure onto his opponent and just waits for him to open the edit so that Malibuca can hit a shot and win this fight. From here, Malibuca goes into Anvil Square and claims the POI and farms up his materials while claiming. The second zone plays max distance, and Malibuca actually rotates very late on this zone, but he's able to stay ahead of the zone by using his aerialist in order to speed up his rotations. Malibuca gets into the second zone and chooses to rotate into the congestion of the third zone because it allows Malibuca to use many hills and builds to block line of sight from his opponents. Because Malibuca was on the edge of the third zone, he had to make a hard fourth zone rotate, but Malibuca does a great job of using the hills and builds here to get himself almost into the fourth zone before Malibuca is forced to use some materials to work his way into the zone. Malibuca then pulls a max distance 50-50 zone, and he goes at the last second and hugs a hill again while using aerialist to speed up his rotates. On this rotate, Malibuca did a great job of using old bases in order to protect himself from enemy fire, but as he was getting into the zone, Malibuca misreads the situation and rotates into the open without cover and almost dies here. Malibuca instantly makes a ton of space though in hard mats, and he is able to heal himself back up to full HP. Once Malibuca is settled, he starts looking for random plays onto players to try and get a hammer going into the end game, but nothing works, and Malibuca just moves on with the rest of his game. Malibuca still needs a hammer though, and so Malibuca uses his aerialist to jump right into Girls' box. PSA, don't do this. You are not Malibuca, and this play should not have worked, and even Malibuca only won this fight because Grolls completely misses a shotgun shot. Regardless, Malibuca gets this refresh onto Grolls and also gets a hammer. From here, Malibuca hammers an aerialist to the front side low ground and pauses and makes at least a 2x1. This makes it extremely difficult for any player to jump onto Malibuca, and if they do, Malibuca still has the space to work with. Malibuca continues to hammer aerialist box until third moving, where he starts to tarp more and is able to pick up a refresh onto a player who is stuck on the backside of the zone. Malibuca then hammers up and sees that no one is on height. From here, he ramps up and connects himself up way above the rest of the lobby, and Malibuca is able to spray down and win the game. Malibuca again lands at Fridgeburg and is contested. Malibuca doesn't want to take this fight though because he doesn't have any clear advantages, so Malibuca uses an impulse grenade in order to disengage out. Malibuca then finds damage back onto the player contesting him, and he immediately changes his pace on the fight now that he has an advantage, and he starts to push in. Unfortunately, the other player was able to disengage, leaving Malibuca very scuffed on heals and materials though. Malibuca isn't too worried about the heals though because he has a treasure map that he will be able to get later on in the game. Malibuca starts to rotate through the mid game and he gets tagged up a little bit. Malibuca chooses to not use any of his heals though, and instead decides to wait until he can find berries to save his shields. Malibuca gets pushed and he's able to hit a shotgun shot onto his opponent. Then as the enemy tries to ramp up, Malibuca is able to sneak a cone over his enemy's head. This forces the opponent to make a move, which Malibuca capitalizes on by establishing piece control with a cone and floor above the opponent before quickly finishing off the fight. Malibuca then sprints towards the center of the third zone and pulls both the fourth zone and the half and half zones from this position. When the first moving pulls, Malibuca uses the aerialist to get to the front side low ground of the first moving, and when he lands, he again makes a 2x1. Malibuca continues his pattern through the end of the first moving, where we see why these 2x1s are so important because it allows Malibuca to safely avoid a fight that he normally would have had to take if he was in a 1x1. Malibuca then uses the aerialist again to work his way mostly into the second moving, where he finds a refresh onto a completely unaware player. Malibuca is then able to claim low ground on the third moving and hold it throughout the entire third moving. When final moving plays, Malibuca sees that the front side of the zone is overly congested, so he goes further ahead into the zone with his med mist in order to claim himself space. Malibuca then finds a kill in the backside of the zone and is able to get a hammer. Malibuca starts looking at height to see if he can make a play, but immediately switches his attention when he sees that the high ground is way too high for him to take. Malibuca claims the low ground and finds himself in a 1v1, which he wins by playing a med mist and tracking his opponent through his build while healing with the med mist to make sure that he doesn't get surprised on. Malibuca again lands at Fridgeburg, but this time he's uncontested and he gets a hammer off spawn. Malibuca quickly gets W keyed off spawn though, and he instantly makes space away from his opponent and looks to go for counter shots. The opponent then sets up a ramp exploit, and Malibuca lets the opponent jump into his box, and then Malibuca runs past his opponent out of his own box. This is a super unpredictable play that allows Malibuca to hit a shot and completely throws his opponent off guard. His opponent quickly hammers out, and Malibuca is able to continue looting and begin to rotate. Malibuca positions himself in the center of second zone on a house and farms it out and pulls third zone here as well. Malibuca then hits a player rotating in and forces him to get lobby sprayed, where he is able to pick up the kill and acquire the best loadout in chapter 4. Alright, all jokes aside, Malibuca then pulls the 4th zone, but uses the materials from the kill he just got to tarp towards the center of the 4th zone. This allows him to make an easy rotate if 50-50 pulls the max distance, which it does. This tarp allows Malibuca just to quickly hammer into the 50-50 zone, making this rotate extremely easy. Malibuca then hammers along the dead side edge of first moving and makes it 2x1 again once he gets into the first moving. Malibuca then hammers to the second moving and claims the low ground by winning an aim duel on the third moving. Malibuca makes a large tarp on the third moving and is able to use this to pick up a kill. Malibuca then continues to tarp through the third moving and the first part of the final moving before he looks up towards height. Malibuca looks to fight the player directly above him, but he gets chopped out from a hammer and is stuck in zone. Malibuca patiently waits in zone with splashes before hammering back into the zone where he finds himself in a 1v1. The high ground player hammers up and Malibuca instantly blocks off his head and just looks to take height off the player. Malibuca takes height and then looks to drop back down again where he swings right around the wall and is able to win the final 1v1 to win his 3rd game in a row. Game 4, Malibuca lands at Fridgeburg uncontested again and he finds a hammer off spawn. Malibuca looks for a potential fight up north but is unable to find any kills. Malibuca waits in the zone with Splash Medic, just collecting chug splashes wherever he can, and he's able to eventually get his way into the zone and into the center of the 2nd zone and brutal bash him. Malibuca gets W keyed and makes sure that he makes a ton of space while going for counter shots. The fight slows down and Malibuca then turns the pace of the fight extremely quickly by quickly jumping in his opponent's box, editing one tile of the cone to block the shot, reset the cone, and win the aim duel. Malibuca then pulls the 3rd zone, and when rotating to the 4th zone, Malibuca runs the first half of the zone before hammering to actually get into the zone in order to prevent players from already having their crosshairs in his direction if he had early hammered. The 50-50 zone plays the max distance and Malibuca hammers into the 50-50 zone and lands in the low ground. Malibuca then hammers towards the dead side of the first moving zone, and Malibuca holds his crosshair on a player who he knows is about to hammer. This allows him to hit a timing shot, which could have resulted in a kill. Malibuca gets into the first moving, and then when the second moving pulls, he sees that there are a ton of builds in front of him. Instead of just hammering and most likely getting blocked by these builds, Malibuca goes right up to these builds so he can use the hammer to break the builds in front of him. Malibuca then hammers to the front side of the second moving and elevates himself to put him outside of congestion because he has no hammer charges left. Malibuca hammers again through the second moving and sees a player with his builds out, so Malibuca instantly lands on him, giving him an easy refresh because the enemy can't shoot back. Malibuca uses the 0-point augment that he got from killing this player to get into the second moving zone, but he is on the low ground and there's a big hill next to Malibuca. Seeing that the next moving zone plays up this hill, Malibuca makes it his #1 priority to elevate up this hill by building, and then he hammers over the very top of the hill to the front side of the third moving. Malibuca claims the low ground and finds a spray kill and hammers into the end of the third moving on a high layer. Malibuca claims the low ground again in the final moving and makes a large tarp to look for kills. Malibuca hammers out once the situation on the low ground gets too chaotic, but Malibuca also has no materials. Malibuca decides to play in the zone and waits until the low ground player forgets about him, and Malibuca is able to find the refresh that he needs, but unfortunately Grass tries to fight Malibuca and hits him hard. Malibuca is able to find some counter shots onto Grass and then uses the 0-point augment again to jump right into Grass's box to pick up the kill. Malibuca is still extremely scuffed though, but he continues to play out the endgame to the best of his ability, and Malibuca catches a break. Both of the other players in the lobby ended up killing each other. If this happened to me, I'd be so mad. That's actually so unfortunate. This is the break that Malibuca needed though, and with this he was able to win his 4th game in a row. Game 5, Malibuca again lands at Fridgeburg and is contested. Malibuca wins a large trade, but the contesting player hammers out. Malibuca then gets pushed himself and doesn't like his position, so he hammers out himself. Malibuca finds himself with very few materials on the 2nd zone, and so he goes into the zone to farm up materials and is able to farm up his hard mats up to max before he gets into the zone where he farms up his wood up to max. Malibuca pulls the 4th zone and finds a spray kill and a supply drop. Malibuca then pulls a close 50-50 zone and quickly tarps into it. Right before the first moving is about to reveal itself, Malibuca is already looking north because he knows that if the zone plays that way, he is going to instantly rotate it. Unfortunately, first moving doesn't play this way, and Malibuca focuses on finding his new rotate, which he makes with a simple hammer rotate. Malibuca then hammers to the front side of the low ground and lands in a player's box, but Malibuca stays very calm and instantly starts to apply pressure to the opponent, allowing him to find this kill. Malibuca continues to hammer through the first moving, and once he gets to the end of the first moving, Malibuca doesn't waste any time and starts looking for plays, and he's able to find an unaware player in the tarp below. Malibuca continues to hammer and play frontside low ground in the second moving, and then uses hammers to get through the third moving as well. On the third moving, Malibuca drops down 2 players who are fighting into his own box. Instead of trying to be greedy for both kills, Malibuca just waits for one player to finish off the fight before opening his edit to make sure he gets both refreshes without risking his own life. This refresh gets Malibuca into the final moving where he claims the low ground, but unfortunately his low ground gets taken off of him because the low ground drops elevation. Malibuca changes his focus towards the high ground and instantly makes a play for it by just hammering up and taking it. Malibuca now has the height, but he still needs to hold it, and he does this by holding his floors when a player hammers up. This prevents him from falling down and allows Malibuca to drop down on Belusi's head and eventually go for a side jump onto the final player to win his 5th game in a row. Unfortunately, that would be Malibuca's last win because in game 6, Malibuca got too greedy and took a lot of damage while trying to use launch pads early in the endgame, and then Malibuca actually died because he got chopped out by a hammer in the final moving, and he didn't instantly protect himself by boxing up, allowing himself to get easily picked up. This cash cup was pure domination, with Malibuca winning 83% of the games he played in solos. It is extremely unlikely we are going to see this dominant of a solo performance again, but if you want to see another team dominate a tournament, go check out the video on screen. Peace.
Stop!